Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to talk about this film. So this is Anne of Green Gables the Sequel. It's also can be found as Anne of Avonlea. It is not. So let's go over what's going on in this film. And then we'll talk about the books that it takes liberties from. Or inspiration from. So in this book, Anne is teaching at Avonlea School, and basically things happen. Gilbert proposes, she says no. Diana is getting married to Fred Wright, and which she finds very, very funny because they barely know each other, at least according to her. And so she decides to take up a teaching position at Kingston, in the town of Kingston, which is invited. She was invited here by her forward teacher, Miss Stacy. So she shows up. She ends up boarding at this school because the current person who normally takes them in will not. She interacts with the headmistress of the school by the name of a woman by the name of Catherine, and then she deals with a specific family of the town called the I believe they're called the Pringles. That's what they're called in the book. So I'm going to go with that. And it's been a couple days since I rewatched this. Yeah. So, but this family kind of rules the roost. And so she has to figure out a way to get them to like her. And she bonds with a young student who's living with her grandmother and I think her aunt. And her father's away somewhere. I think her mother died. So this is her father's mother. And the grandmother's not particularly happy that she's in the school and really wants to isolate her. And her and Anne bond, and they eventually do a play that kind of breaks the ice. And then Anne is able to convince the grandmother, who is the matriarch practically of the town, to go outside and get the daughter who's been taking care of her finally gets to go out. I think she goes to a wedding. And then I believe, I'm trying to think. It's hard because I just read Anne of the Windy Populars, which is where a lot of this was taken from. So I'm mixing them up in my head. And eventually Anne's, in the course of this, she also does periodically go home. She finds out that Gilbert, who's going to medical school, gets engaged. She's proposed to by this young girl's father, and she does refuse him. And then when she's home, she finds out that Gilbert has scarlet fever and he nearly dies, and she goes to him, and then she actually gets better. I do believe she brings Catherine home with her. They do take that part out. And this woman learns to kind of let her hair down and realize what a real love kind of is. And then I think I don't know the sequence events. I'm pretty sure this is before this. The old woman dies in there. And they go to the funeral, and she basically has to turn essentially this girl's father down again. And then she resigns from the school and goes home. And then after then Gilbert gets sick. Basically it ends with him coming to her and then going for a walk and him proposing. So they become engaged, and he pretty much tells her it's going to be, I still have to go to medical school. She's like, fine. I'm perfectly happy. He still has 3 years of medical school left. And that's kind of the gist of this. You get a lot of the back and forth of her in school, her dealing with this teacher by the name of Catherine, her and Miss Stacy trying to kind of weasel their way with this family to stop harassing Anne. So, it is a very good film. It, however, takes bits and pieces from a bunch of places. It takes bits and pieces from Anne of Avonlea, in which Anne is covering, basically, this is the, I think it was 2 or 3 years. I think it's like, no, it's 3. Because she's 16 at the end of Anne of Green Gables, and she's 18 at the end of Anne of Avonlea. So she's 18. That's when Anne of Avonlea takes place, where she's teaching. Marilla adopts twins of her cousins. Those are not brought into the story whatsoever. But eventually Anne just, in the film, she gets kind of fed up and just wants, Diana's getting married. Gilbert and her are not friends because she pretty much told him she didn't love him, and she wants out of town. And Miss Lynn is going to move in with Marilla. Well, no, Marilla says her eyesight is getting better. In the book, Miss Lynn is going to move in with Marilla to help take care of the twins, because she becomes widowed. So Miss Rachel Lynn becomes widowed. She sells her house. They're in massive debt. So because they mortgaged their house to help out one of their kids. So she moves in with Marilla to help take care of the twins in the book, not the film. The twins are not brought into the film at all because, again, they're taking bits and pieces. Then Anne leaves. Now, I'm trying to think if they just cut out Anne of the Island completely. They bring some fictional things in. So in Anne of the Island, Anne goes to Redmond College, which is in Nova Scotia. And during that time, she's proposed to by a friend of hers for her brother. Ruby Gillis dies, who's one of her friends, of consumption, also known as tuberculosis. I think what else happens in there? A whole lot of other stuff. It's a really, really good book. But that's when she's first away from home. And that's when Diana gets married. Because they wait in the books for Diana to get married. Because her Fred, who she does actually know, because they've known him in school, they know him for years, and he needs to earn enough money for his own farm. So they very much portray him in the films as someone much poorer than Diana, which is not, I believe, implied in the books at all. They are very much of equal status. So, yawning, sorry. I'm just late because I wanted to finish reviewing Anne, the Wendy Populars. So it's the third book is where Anne, after Gilbert proposes, and yes, in the book of Anne of the Island, she is courted by a man by the name of Royal something. And she thinks she wants to marry him. When he proposes, when they are finished with school, this is 4 years later, she says no. And he's infuriated. It's like, you just wasted 2 years of my life. And she's like, I didn't mean to. I thought I could marry you, but not. They replaced this in the film with her turning down the proposal of this young girl's, I think the girl's name is Elizabeth, father. Now on to where you're getting most of what is going on in this book. So you have Anne of Wendy Poplars. Gilbert has proposed. He has 3 years of medical school left. Anne goes to the town of Somerville, which is a bit bigger, essentially she's the head teacher. She's the principal of this school. She is still teaching. And this is where you get the Pringle family. And she eventually weasels her way into their good graces as they try to destroy her, because she basically got the job when they wanted somebody else. That's pretty much it. It's like a cousin of theirs didn't get the position. So, Instead, Anne got it. So, she finds a document that mentions their ancestor, and she sends it to them, and they find it really interesting, and they bring her into the fold. The Catherine character is from this book. She is the vice principal, and Anne does bring her home to Green Gables. Neither one of them are living at this high school, which is where they're teaching. This Catherine's living in another boarding house. Anne is living at Windy Populars, with two widows and their helper. So, but the Catherine is the vice principal. She brings her home. She learns her story of how her parents hated her. They died. Then she was taken in by an aunt and uncle who pretty much treated her like trash because she was just a poor relation. She was able to go to Queen's College to get her teaching degree, but she had to pay her uncle back. And at this point in the time of the story, she had just done that. And Anne basically helps her turn around and become a lovable person. And what really happens to her is she goes back to Queen's College to take a secretarial course. And at the end of the book, hi Kendra, I have a calico here. Kneel down. And bring up the cat. Hi cat, she is 14. She is mine. All right. And she ends up becoming a secretary of a guy who's going to travel the world. That's what happens to Catherine at the end of the book. The Elizabeth and the grandmother are from a completely different character in this book, where this is a young girl, much, much younger than the girl in the film that Anne meets and shares milk with, and talks with. And eventually she's very, very sheltered. She is not in the school. She's like 8. And eventually Anne writes to her father. And at the end of the books, he shows up. No, he does not propose to Anne. But he ends up taking his daughter, which is Elizabeth, with him to Boston. Kendra, stop that. So that's where these characters are coming from in this film. And yes, again, Anne has already been proposed to by Windy Populars. She's there teaching at this school for 3 years. Most of the book involves letters to Gilbert. You don't really see much of Gilbert. By this time, of course, Diana is married. I don't know how many children she has. 2, 3, something like that. She has multiple children at this point. So the film is really good, but Sullivan intermixes a lot of drama from 3 different books and practically cuts out Anne of the Island, where Anne gets her bachelor's degree, essentially. I don't know in what. I think it's just a general bachelor's of arts degree from Redmond College. And again, she's proposed to 3 times. Again, she turns down Gilbert. She turns down her old classmate's brother. Now, he marries someone more suitable. She goes off west, falls in love with a billionaire, and gets married to him. That's what happens to her. So she's a character from the original Anne of Green Gables. So that's a lot of stuff happens in Anne of the Island, and he cuts most of it out. Miss Stacy actually never, as far as I know, shows up again. It's like she leaves in Anne of Green Gables, and she is never seen again. So they just decide to, they make a very interesting story. It's a very interesting film. I do love these films. But again, he's taking bits from Anne of Avonlea, some interesting ideas from Anne of the Island, though cutting out most of it, and the vast majority of the story comes from Windy Populars, only he decides to put it in Nova Scotia rather than back on Prince Edward Island, and basically makes Anne just a regular teacher rather than technically she's the head of the school. When she's fighting these Pringles, which is very, very interesting. So I do recommend the film. I do enjoy it. But the books definitely give a different tale to it. So that's really the end of this video. I have covered the first book. I will cover the next film, which is Anne the Continuing Story. That is a completely brand new screenplay that has nothing to do with any of the books, because there was a lawsuit Yeah, the guy who created the films, as well as the TV show, The Road to Avonlea, which, yes, I am reviewing. It will be coming up once I finish these. Yeah, there was a lawsuit. He was sued by the family because they did not pay them enough. They went to court. The Canadian courts agreed with the family. So not only is the third film filmed many years later, in fact, I believe it's filmed after The Road to Avonlea finishes. So yeah, it is actually one of my favorites, but it has nothing to do with the books. So we will be getting there. The next book coming up is, I don't have it here, it's on my bed, is Anne of Ingleside, or no, Anne's House of Dreams, followed by Anne of Ingleside, followed by Rainbow Valley, which is about Anne's children, and then Rilla of Ingleside, which is about her youngest daughter, which I think takes place during World War I. So those are the books incoming, and then I'll be doing the rest of the short stories, and I will end with The Blythes Remembered, which is the only book in this collection that is still under copyright because it was found and published after L.M Montgomery's death. In fact, it was published in 2009. So it's, again, a collection of short stories. And, of course, I'll be reviewing the 7 series of The Road to Avonlea. So that is it for this video. I will be, once all those done, I'm covering the Boxcar Children, then I'm covering the Wings of Fire series. I'm doing a whole bunch of theme months. You guys are watching this in, what, February? Black History Month. The following month is Women's History Month. Then I'm covering the Titanic. I have a giant stack of books here, and I need to get through. But again, this is being filmed at the end of August, so I have work to do. But then I'm doing Angel Island with Eastern immigration, Ellis Island with Western, no, sorry, switching. Angel Islands in San Francisco with Asian immigration. And then I'm covering Eastern immigration, which is Ellis Island stuff. Then I'm doing women's brain inventors. Then I'm doing food. Then I'm doing a deep dive into Beauty and the Beast. My daughter loves the live action. I've seen a lot of it. I'll probably review it. I will review it eventually. Obviously, I'm doing a deep dive into it. I'm also doing the animation, and I'm probably going to compare the two. Then I'm doing space. November is the Hindu festival of Diwali, and then I'm doing mysteries in December. So that is incoming. Check out what I've got. I have a decent catalog of stuff from Black History Month to Asian History Month to all sorts of topic to Native American stuff. The reason I'm not doing it this year is because I kind of ran out of stuff to do, particularly come to media. It's hard to find Native American media. So like and subscribe, leave a positive comment if you have one. Thank you.